perspectives with differing views. Rachel's more of a feeler and I'm more of a thinker, and so that definitely gets in my way and it definitely gets in her way in two different ways. So the thing, she is the yin to my yang and vice versa. So that's the thing about like capitalizing on each other's strengths, but also
learning
from each other's weaknesses. Yeah, it gets you to really hone into their perspectives. But anyway, how do you get your relationship and your health on point? Well, if you have the people around you pushing you to do the things that you want to do in your life, it's a lot easier than trying to do it but with bold disciplines. Two people's discipline is going to help you out a lot more than one. But today we're talking about a differing perspective and a book that neither of us really realized was... Did you say shit? Mm-hmm. What did you say shit about?
It's just warm in here.
We didn't realize that this book was politically charged before we read it. I liked the story, and I like what it said about self-responsibility and some different things. And I thought it was worth venturing into the perspective. And then lately, in the last probably year, probably in the last 6 months to a year, it's just been bombarded through the news as like this awful, terrible thing. I'm like, well, and yeah, and that's why I wanted you to read it, because I was like, I wanted you to get to see if you saw what I saw or if you saw what everybody else was seeing. Because how do I say this?
I think if they would read the whole thing,
right,
then it would not be considered like so out there.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because I was getting in multiple conversations with people. I was like, was this, like, what do you guys think? And I had never even knew that it was such a political thing. And they were like, oh, well, we disagree with this,
Maybe you should
this.
explain what book you're talking about
and
first.
Then maybe not.
I think you should.
But let me finish my train of thought, because I don't remember what it was now. Oh, numerous times, every time I'd ask them, well, have you ever read it? They're like, no, I haven't. So I'm like, well, there you go. Until you read it, you don't know. We're talking about the book Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. What did you think of it?
Well, I went into it not knowing exactly what it was at all, just that it had controversy. But like in high school and elementary school and whatever, junior high, we had read many books that were controversial for different reasons. And
like
usually
what?
It was about like the time period, like for the time period it was controversial. So like, for example, I mean, what's the one? Without any knowledge of why it's controversial, and then figure it out for myself.
Well, you didn't even know that it was controversial until about 5 minutes ago.
I knew that it was like something that had like some talk about it, but that's about it. I didn't know why or what about it. Like, I had no idea that it had characters in it. I didn't know if it was fiction or fact. I didn't know anything. So.
I really didn't either walking into it. The entirety for me reading it was, I don't know whose list I used, but it's like top literary novels of all time. I picked a list and I was like, and I chose that over the course of that year, I was going to put a dent in that list. So that book happened to be in that list. Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged happened to be in that list, and I read both of them.
And that's another thing about the book. It's how many pages long? So
it's 1,500 pages long and 8-point
part of it
font.
Audio version, part of it I read it. But all in all, I looked at like how long it takes for the audio version, and it's 62 hours of.
What do you think of the book, though?
I mean, I liked it. It kept me engaged. I liked that there were certain perspectives that I like that you can get into each person's head and kind of understand it from their perspective. So I
I looked this up before the show. 1957, and then Fountainhead was written like 15 years before that. And Atlas Shrugged is definitely her masterpiece. I've read quite a few Ayn Rand things, and she, for one, like, if a female wrote what she wrote today, it wouldn't be like, oh my God, this is crazy. But back then, like, that was kind of wild. Like, it took a pretty strong-willed woman to pull that off. Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool. Whether you agree with her or not, like, that's kind of neat. Like, she decided to have a voice in a time where it wasn't like women had the voice like they have today, which I thought was pretty cool. And what?
She has a very clear set of, like, morals and virtues, and she goes by a very specific, and she can, like, if you listen to her in interviews, she can break down, like, the tiniest little detail of how she believes that she feels, and she'll back it up with logic and reason. And it's kind of hard to ignore and argue with somebody that is using, like, hardcore reason.
Well, that's the thing, but people still do.
I know, but that's her the way of seeing it. But like, not everybody can see it that way because they don't reason in that way. She's breaking down a belief to somebody, she's trying to explain it, and she uses her reason and her logic. And for someone else that's trying to understand what she's saying, if they don't reason and they're not using reason and logic to understand their point of view, then they have no way of arguing with what she's saying.
Well, yeah, of course. But that's
all on a
hard to
sliding
make
scale too. Like, not everybody is going to see it exactly the same.
Oh, I see the sliding scale.
Like, it's not like. Doing, then do it. But if you're doing it just because you feel like you're obligated to, or it's moral obligation, then why would you do it?
Or you're pressured into it by a societal thing, or as long, like I think that, like, that's the thing when I talk with people who want to just, like, bash her, and then I ask if they've ever read anything by her, and they say no. I think that's a little silly, because I think if they read her, they'd understand that that it's a very different viewpoint. But, like, to read something with a different perspective is challenging, because you have to admit that you're wrong first on some level. To challenge your own perspectives is really hard. I mean, I don't like to be wrong. I like to be right. So, like, to challenge your perspective, you have to go, okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. And then that throws you into this huge bout of chaos, where you're like, if I'm wrong, then what is right? And then you get into, like, all these different, how do you rewire your framework so that you can understand the world in which you live?
But we always want to be rewiring it. I think that's also.
It's just, I know, right.
You should always be able to say.
I think that's right. I think that is accurate to say, like, you always want to be challenging your perspectives, but at the same time, it's really hard. It's really hard to navigate the world when you don't have a lens by which to see it through, and if you go to a different lens, and then you go to a different lens, and you go to a different lens, at some point do you go, okay, well, all the lenses are wrong and they're all kind of right at the same time?
Well, it's kind of like when you're a kid and you think that your parents are just, like, everything, like they know everything they've ever told you is fact. And then you go to, like, one of your friends and you say, like, oh, my dad said this. And they're like, actually, no, that's wrong. You want to, like, fight to the death to, like, no, but my dad said, like, and he's right. Like, it's like looking in a dictionary. You're just so sure that they're wrong. So it's kind of like, I don't know, as you get older, if you don't kind of, like, mold and manipulate those kinds of, like, hardcore beliefs, it gets a little harder to take it. It's like a blow to your...
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
it's like somebody saying stupid. You're like, you're stupid. It's like, no, you're not stupid. You're just... you're not thinking of it in that way. Like, just because one person thinks of it this way doesn't mean that it's right.
Yeah, you've been around for people that like, oh, so you're an atheist, and I'm like, no, I'm not an atheist. Oh, but you're not a Christian. I'm like, no, I'm not a Christian. And they're like, oh, okay, what are you? And I'm like, well, I'm me. And they're like they can't figure it out. And I'm like, I don't not believe in God. I don't not believe in something.
No, yeah.
But I don't.
You're not defined.
I don't look at it like,
and
even if you want to go with like the man in the sky, yeah, sure. Like if you're looking to the infinite, then that would make sense to look to the sky, because then it just goes forever. Like you're just looking into like a loop of coming back to you eventually.
It's Adam's
like,
interpretation
that makes sense.
of religion. It doesn't have to be like this or that or this or that.
It's the problem that I have with like secular spirituality. It's like, okay, yeah, I can get along with you, but you don't have to consider yourself atheist to be secular. Like that's not, I don't think that that's right either. I think like there's so much more to this thing than you can even grasp, because your DNA is already playing you before you even started, because you're already looking through a lens that you don't even know exists.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's usually that like trigger, instead of thinking of it as a trigger for like an argument or a disagreement, it should be like a red flag, like, hey, this is a learning experience. And I think, like, we all do this, like every day I do this, but like so many times I'm just like, if I were to just break down what they said and actually take it as like a constructive criticism rather than an attack,
maybe not even a criticism,
or a
but maybe
constructive comment.
The way that I do it when I start getting myself into like that spazzy shit where like I can't understand what somebody else is saying, is to say maybe they know something I don't, which is accurate.
Yeah.
Like, you know something I don't. Like, there is no possible way that you do.
Everybody's an expert at something.
Well, even if they're not an expert at something, the stupidest person in the world knows something I don't. Like I don't know what they had for breakfast this morning. You know, just as simple as that.
You might want to know that really bad.
Yeah, I might want to know that really bad. But I do think that this book got politically charged, and I don't totally know why, but I do, like, it does make sense that people have this really tough time with selfless versus selfish, which is something she really gets into in the book. What were your takeaways from that?
So, are we explaining at all what the book is about, or are we just?
I don't think there's any point, because how are you going to fit?
Well, her big thing is about, like, doing things for yourself before you can do things for other people, and you shouldn't feel shame in that, and you shouldn't. And like a big thing against that was like, no, it's about doing what's for the good of the people, and like what
altruism.
Yeah,
idealistic.
But that's backwards, because like you can't help others until you help yourself.
Well, and and the other way around is cannibalism, because if you're going to give everything away for like if you're going to give you away, like everything that you have away, you're just going to keep on giving it without ever giving to yourself and taking care of yourself first. Well, then you're cannibalizing your own life in the hopes that somebody else will benefit. And it's like, no, that's not. Why does it have to be if you lose for them to win? That's a zero-sum game. I don't think life is a zero-sum game. I think that life is a non-zero-sum game where everybody can win. Like I think like business is that way. If you come into Grit Gym and you pay money to get access to our knowledge and to our training methods and all of this different stuff, you are going to have massive benefit from that, and we're going to have benefit from that because we get to teach something that we love to teach, and we get income from that.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win. It's not like, but some people think that like that's a loss, like somebody lost in that scenario. It's like nobody lost. That's a win-win. That's a non-zero-sum game.
We'll say you gave it away for free.
That would be cannibalism.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Like, gave it away for free. That would be a lose-lose. Someone would get that'd be a lose for us, because like what it wouldn't last. For one, you can't stay open, and for two, like at some point it's just like, well, this sucks. I'm working my ass off for absolutely nothing. And then that person, when there's a funny thing that happens when people put money on the table. When people invest in their money, they invest their energy. They start investing their energy. They start investing their time. They start investing their focus. They start investing their effort, and they get progress from it. The people who don't pay do not pay attention, and I've seen that over and over and over again. You give out a discount, and people If there's not a little bit of, oh man, this is a decent amount of money, people do not do the thing. I like, some people try to convince me otherwise of that. I have never seen that be disproven, and I don't think, I think that's complete garbage by anybody who tries to say that that's not accurate. You do not want the thing for free because you will not value it as much if you got it for free.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But yeah, selfish versus selfless. If you really, like, there's a negative connotation around the word selfish, and I think we'd all be better off if there wasn't that negative connotation around the word selfish.
There is, and I mean, I don't know, like, how that started, because I mean, I think in that way there's like two interpretations of it. People see the word of, like, I see it now as being like still kind of a negative word. Sure. Even though I know that it's not a bad thing to help myself. I
should have said that different.
What?
I should have said selfless gets viewed as this super positive thing. And I don't think, I will not give 1 ounce of my time to someone who considers themselves selfless. Parenting is so selfless. Going to work is so selfless. This and this and this is so selfless. No, you went to work to get a paycheck to do a thing. Like, even me, like, I don't get paid a lot, but I go to work doing a job that I love to do, and it feels good to me. That's not selfless. That is selfish. If we how do I say this? I'm trying to come up with a good example, but I can only think of sex.
Think of somebody else.
But it's just like it feels good to do good things. Like, it feels good to serve. Like, that's a little bit selfish. Like, that's not necessarily 100% selfless.
No. Well, even in like a lot of the religion, and like, they promote doing acts of good or volunteering, but that's still like, you're doing that for a reason.
Yeah, like the charitable cause that you brought up earlier.
Yeah. It is a nice thing that you're doing, but like, you are doing it for a reason.
Yeah, and if you play that selfless, victimized bullshit, like, oh, I'm just so selfless and I give everything of my own away and it makes me a better person. You play that self-righteous, self-victimizing sort of charity game, and it's just like, no. Well, no, that is like the ultimate negative, like no, go away.
Well, like, if you're in the middle of a snowstorm and somebody next to you doesn't have a coat, are you going to give them your coat?
Or maybe you could envelope, like, do like the double.
Yeah, you don't, I mean, that's not going to, that might help them, but like that, I mean, okay, say it was your kids. Like, I don't know, is there a way to say that? Like, I can't give them my food or my coat in that moment to survive because I have to be the one to survive. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't help them after I die.
Yeah. Yeah, the cliche one is the TSA, that you're supposed to put the mask on yourself before you put it on everybody else.
That.
Because if you put the mask on yourself, like, if you don't put the mask on yourself, you're out in like 8 seconds and you can maybe get a mask on one of your kids. Whereas, like, if you put the mask on you, you get it on all of them.
You have to be selfish in that moment. It's life or death for everybody around you, not just for you.
Yeah, there's that kind of goes into this. Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History podcast. He has an episode where he goes into, it's called Pull the Goalie. It's where you take like the unpopular stance.
Pull the goalie?
Yeah, because like in hockey, like with 1 minute left, sometimes they'll pull the goalie, and statistically that's inaccurate. If you were trying to win the game and you were down, you would pull the goalie around like the 8-minute mark. If you were down by 2, you'd pull it way earlier in the game. But nobody pulls the goalie that early in the game because they get ridiculed and judged, and the score might end up being 12-0 instead of. But you have more of a chance of having that extra offensive player out there trying to score in that time. So like
Okay.
and they gave another example of like a woman that has like an intruder in her house, and she stays because the baby is with the bad guy or something, and it's like, actually it's better if she would leave and go get help, than to stay and try to protect her kid, like that kind of thing, like like taking unpopular positions that are really hard to do. I think that's kind of what we're getting into here, is the selfish versus selfless thing.
Well, you also have to use reason in that.
Yeah, you have to use tons of reason.
Like, her selfish thought would be, I want my baby, I can't go without my baby. But like, when you really think about it, like,
what's going to be better for the kid?
Like,
and for you.
If you had to break it down, I don't know. Like,
if you could think without emotion in that moment and analyze the scenario.
Statistically, if you break it down into numbers,
right?
Like, it's a horrible thing to think about. But if that 1% like saves your baby, then you better run and get help.
Right. Yeah, you're better off to go and get help.
Can we go to like the part of the book where I was just like, okay, this is like, where it was like my tipping point, where I was just like, okay, this can't work.
What's that?
So like,
yes, we should. I want to know about this.
Okay, so in the book, like, I don't know, halfway through, it's just like, I still didn't know what side I was on. So basically, it's not like a there's the side of like, everything is for the public good. Everything is like, serve the public before you serve yourself. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, it was like great minds and like businesses that were just trying to like get by and like build their business and build up like industry. So
they were trying to serve themselves in order to serve the people.
All the while, there's the people in the middle that are trying to like dictate what goes on, like who does what, and like what is public good. They're trying to decide what is for the public good.
So what was your tipping point?
So for my tipping point was when they basically, it was like a law or initiative. It was basically saying, nobody can create anything unless they are able to share it equally. Nobody can, so then they had to like shut down, like, so nobody could be an author, nobody could be an artist, nobody could be a scientist. Like, you can't create unless you're able to share it equally. So they were able to shut that down. And I thought that was like, in that moment, I was like, they just screwed themselves. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no way that you can take away somebody's creativity and like ability to do what they do best and have things just run smoothly. Mm. You're basically putting people into pegs and saying like, this is what you're going to do now, this is what you're going to do, and what you were great at before, you can't share it with anybody. Yeah. So people were just like blindly saying like, well, I am getting like, I am getting this for free, and it is fair, and it is for the greater good. So they were okay with it at first, but then they didn't realize what they were losing in that moment.
And then it all falls apart.
And then it just falls apart because nothing was able to grow. Nothing was able to, like, no discoveries. Yeah. Nothing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's not boring.
Yeah, I mean, in 1957, she basically was, like, writing like, that's what we're seeing today. Like, you just mentioned.
I knew you were going to say that.
I know, but it's hard. Like, this is why it turns to, like, that's a socialist right there.
It's a very extreme example.
It is not an extreme example. It is exactly what is happening right now. And I think that's why that's popped up in the last year.
But, like, that's when I knew. I was like, okay, this is not,
well,
like, when they took away, like, art and, like, literature and all that stuff, I was like, but they had to. In order for them to say that these are the laws and you have to abide by them, that they had to take away all that stuff.
They were the thought police, yeah.
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 So
talk our way, write our way, and make it for everybody. Yeah. Everybody's got to be equal. And it's like, wait a minute. You can't
have one law without the other.
Shaq's 7'2". Like, not everybody's equal. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it was.
Yeah, and the legal system came in and kind of ruled over the private industry, and where the private industry was doing fine, and then everything fell apart. The thing that I think anyway, go ahead.
I think that's where people are talking about it now, because it's kind of like, I don't know.
It's
Politics are kind of like up in the air. Like,
but it's dressed up with altruism. Like it's like dressed up with this like, oh, but for the greater good, and it's like, but they're using the greater good to manipulate you into thinking that that's hit it.
But where it went from being like a book of fiction to being nonfiction, like she was calling out in little ways, like this is how it would start. This is how this would be the next step, and then the next step, and the next step. Like when you give people power that only have certain things in mind, and they don't have enough of a compromise, then it topples over into one direction, and you can't go back from it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's happening right now. I'm saying like it's hinting at it, which is not a
There's
nice...
no way to even dispute that it's happening right now. It's been happening. I mean, it's slowly but surely been coming along since like
you think more than I do.
She thought that this was happening in 1957, and you think it was happening in 1957, and like it sure is happening now.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, what if that book wouldn't have come out?
I don't know. I think more people need to read 1984, and more people need to read Atlas Shrugged. Even if they get done with it and they're extremely opposed to it, like I don't care. At least they read it. At least they have.
No, I think it's really
challenged
important.
The perspective.
Like, I don't think many people have 62 hours worth of time to read a book.
Yeah, they do.
But like,
priorities.
Honestly, like if.
You're a part Luke Skywalker, you're a part Darth Vader, you're a part the Sith, you're a part the Jedi, you're a part, like, a
Princess
part of
Leia.
you is every one of them. And you might skew towards one or the other, but they're all in you. So, like, the evil is in you, the good is in you, like that sort of thing. And I think with this book, that's the same way. I don't think, like, if you read it from the standpoint, like, Jimmy Taggart is you to a certain extent. Like, I would hate the idea of... I despise that idea that Jimmy Taggart, I could have anything in common with Jimmy Taggart. At the same time, I think I do. I'm like at my worst. And like, are there a part Dagny, a part Reardon, a part Francisco, who's my favorite character? He's the man.
Okay.
But I think they're a part of all of us.
Yeah, I think they kind of touch on each.
If you were going to read both, if you decided that you're going to read both, definitely read Fountainhead first, because Atlas Shrugged is so much better than Fountainhead, even though Fountainhead's fantastic.
All right. I'll remember that next time.
But Ayn Rand has some kind of fucked up stuff going on.
Do you have to...
I have to get going.
Okay.
This has been a riveting discussion, Rachel Park.
Riveting.
I do think you like... We get a one-sided view in our society that you're taught to share always, and it's like, well, no, sometimes, like in competition, you should not share. That is a cooperative thing.
Or you're taught to pick a side.
Like, we're not clear with our lessons. And you're taught to pick a side. And it's like, no, you can think for yourself. You can think through it.
Yeah, you don't have to be this or that. You can be like, this is Rachel and that's Adam.
Yeah.
Like, you get to choose. That's the beauty of being unique.
And you can have discourse where you disagree with each other and you can still have a discussion. I think that's one of the biggest lost things. You can have situations where like there are not where you learn that you can't just paint with broad strokes. You can't.
Well, why would you want somebody to think for you?
That too, but I mean with broad strokes, I mean like some people say like, no, everybody should be able to take care of themselves. Well, some people can't, even though that's a small portion of the population. So you can't just make that statement. But at the same time, if you make the statement that, oh, everybody needs to be taken care of, because no one's as smart as me. That's what high level entrepreneurs do. It's just an annoying thing that I think is just so silly, is to think that you can take away someone's ability to care for themselves. That's absurd. They're like no one's as smart as me, so they need to be taken care of. It's like, that's not true. That is not true. What they do for themselves, and they need help, but that is a tiny little portion. And they think they need to take care of everybody. So they're like, either extreme is completely just ridiculous to me. But thinking for yourself makes sense.
Well said.
You want to close this off?
Go float yourself.
I am going to go float myself. That's exactly what I'm doing. All right, thanks for being here, guys. Really appreciate it. If you have perspectives, if you've read either of those books, if you've read Atlas Shrugged, we'd really like to hear your comments down below and what you think of it, especially if they disagree with ours, because I really like, I know that people don't believe me, but I don't care. I'm going to keep on saying it. I like it when people disagree with me because it allows me to grow my perspectives, which allows me to grow my intelligence. And as long as you agree that you're going to keep it civil. You get mad, that's on you. If I get mad, that's on me. That's the agreement. All right, you ready to shut this down?
Yep.
All right, good talk. All right, thanks for being here, guys. We'll be back next Tuesday.
Bye-bye.